and we won't go live just yet.
Before I forget, what kind of pizza did you get?
He ordered some kind of meat lovers or something. I don't know. It had potatoes on it and ham and I don't know, weird stuff.
It was good.
It was good.
I have wanted to know since you said you got a pizza. I was like, I need to know what they're eating, and I can imagine eating it.
It had ranch dressing on it or something, right?
Ranch? No, it was a loaded baked potato pizza.
Loaded baked potato pizza.
So it had like sour cream and bacon and pieces of potato on it.
It was good. I know. I was like, this is the first time I've eaten out in probably like 6 months. Like, I don't know what that life is like, eating out all the time.
Well, you have a full kitchen in the bus?
Yeah, and because I'm broke all the time, I just cook our meals at home. Yeah, exactly.
Like, ooh, melon mushroom, fancy. That's why
I know.
Like, tell me exactly what you're going to eat.
Guff had to buy it.
Yeah, we put it on the nonprofit account.
It was part of our nonprofit expenses, business meetings.
Of course.
Yeah, it was a business meeting.
Yeah.
All right, so give me one more second. The Facebook Live thing did that stupid thing again, so I have to type up the whole thing all over again.
So, Ty,
talk about doing dumb things today. I broke off my turn signal handle today, so I no longer can tell the people behind me that I'm going left or right.
Just stick your arm out.
Well, most of the time there's nobody behind me because I'm going 50 miles an hour down the highway, but just in case.
I'm using the mug that you and Rachel trash talked from the craft convention.
Oh, really?
How dare you?
So, it has a whistle on here.
Oh, you did. That's so funny.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, the guy, he's like, I made these mugs and they whistle. And I was like, sold, buddy.
Sign me up.
Yeah.
That
makes
funny.
noise. Let's go.
This is a Mark Errol one.
Oh, nice.
All right, so I'm going to go live now. And give me 1 second.
Oh, see it.
Okay. And we are live on Facebook. Hello and welcome to another visiting artist session with myself, Ty Nicholson, ceramic studio manager, and Kate Driscoll, gallery and exhibitions manager from the Hudgens Center of Art and Massive Amounts of Learning. And today we are pleased to welcome Jessica Rambo. Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Jessica. Why don't you go ahead and tell us all about yourself?
Okay, so I like long walks on the beach and sitting in parking lots. No, I'm just kidding. I'm Jessica Rambo. I did 10 years in the Marine Corps as a combat cameraman, and then got down and went to art school, bought a school bus, turned it into a tiny house. And now I run a nonprofit that helps veterans use art as a healing practice.
Very nice. So what brought about this project, the Painted Buffalo Traveling Art Studio? Yeah,
ultimately it was just my own healing and my own what I call creating my own care package for myself. I used drugs, I used alcohol, I did all of these things that they tell you not to do to kind of cope with mental health and the trauma of life in the military. And I was just trying to find my own way to survive. And I, on a whim, applied to art school after being medically separated from the Marine Corps after 10 years. And that is kind of where my whole life changed on, using holistic measures for my own mental health and mindfulness recovery.
So, for the people at home, so how, like on a like a practical or day-to-day level does your nonprofit like implement its mission?
So just about every day, we have two, oh, my cat's moving the camera. We have two avenues that I try to work with. One, advocating for veteran artists, similar to Tyler. You know, that's how we kind of got introduced, was sharing his work because he's a veteran and an artist. And then the second is getting veterans that aren't a part of the art world introduced to art making practices that, you know, just naturally have a healing aspect when you're making things, and just kind of, you know, that kind of stuff. So two avenues, you know. So right now we're doing a tour around the United States, and I'm meeting up with, like you met Guff, meeting up with other veteran nonprofits that do holistic methods to what I, you know, like to say, saving lives of veterans, and then meeting up with veteran artists across the country and getting their name out there. And then meeting up on the road veterans and teaching art classes here on the bus. Or if they're not able to leave their house for whatever reason, mental health reasons, physical reasons, anything like that, I can literally drive the art studio to their home and be able to make art either in their home, or they can come to the bus. We have a, you know, we try to run as flexible as possible. So whatever the veteran feels comfortable with, we try to make that happen. And whatever kind of art they want to make, we try to make that happen as well.
And on your current tour of going around the country, how long do you expect that to take?
Right now we're up to 30 states in 6 months. So we're trying our best to get to as many veterans as possible. I have a list on my website. It's called the American Tour. And if any other veterans go to there and see that I might be hitting a town, their town or close to their town, and they contact me, I'll add them to the list. And so the list has just been growing and growing of all the veterans and veteran artists that are trying to be a part of the project too.
What would you say is the biggest challenge in the work that you're doing right now?
Especially right now with the whole COVID-19 stuff, a lot of places are shut down. A lot of, you know, veterans are, you know, we're just naturally told not to isolate ourselves and not to, you know, be at home alone and whatever, but that's exactly what the entire country is doing. So I'm trying my best to stay on the road and keep going to these, you know, veterans, but also do it as safely and convenient as possible.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's amazing the kind of healing power of the act of making, like what that really does for somebody. What can you kind of describe the moment or pinpoint the moment when you thought like, hey, you know what, I'm going to take an old Bluebird bus, the kind of symbol of misery in the military, and turn it into a healing kind of a healing mobile?
I'm glad you caught on to that metaphor. Not a lot of people, you know, get it. But, you know, for me, I thought it was funny, you know, every range visit, every airport travel, everything was on this Bluebird school bus. I mean, from literally the day you leave for boot camp, they put you on a bus, and that's the end of your life as you know it. But I wanted to make it full circle. Like, this is, you know, a way that you can heal and overcome that. And so literally I was taking a class at University of North Carolina, Greensboro. I was going through art school, and I took a class about community-based arts and how to use art to grow your community, whether it's art classes or murals, or just, you know, when you're driving down the highway, you see murals and that kind of stuff, and kind of getting the community involved. And that's kind of what started, you know, how do I want to benefit the community? And for me, my community is the veterans. And so on a whim, I went on Craigslist and bought a school bus for $5,000 and started turning it into a tiny home for my family and I. And then it evolved into, you know, where do I want my art practice, my art making, you know, my studio here on the bus, because I wasn't willing to give that up in a tiny home. And then kind of morphing it into, well, I can invite people on the bus and, you know, into our living room and create art and kind of go from there. And it literally just snowballed into this, you know, big thing, and people were like, oh, you should do this and you should do that. And I kind of added to the mission on, you know, what people were saying that they haven't found before, and how I could, you know, bring that to them.
So were you like a creative even when you were younger, like a kid, or is it something you discovered later?
Yeah, I had always been artistic and, you know, painting and drawing and just making, you know, kind of just making things. I grew up in a military family, so we didn't really have a lot of money, but my mom was very creative, and, you know, if we needed something, a table or, you know, whatever, she would just make it. And so I, you know, kind of inherited that aspect. And then when I joined the Marine Corps, I was a combat cameraman. So that was already, you know, part of the art world, but also the Marine Corps world. And then art school, you know, like I got out of the Marine Corps and went to art school and realized there was more than red, white, blue, gold, and silver. There was an array of colors that I could use. And so that broadens, you know, the aspects of art. But, you know, I've always had some kind of artistic thing in my life, and this just adds on to it.
David King says, "Semper Fi, Devil Dog." Were you
Semper
an
Fi,
artist? Sir. Yeah. Were you an artist recruit in boot camp? But I think you.
Yep. We got locked in a closet, me and another female recruit, and we made the range flags. And you know, our hike to the range, we got to carry our flag and make the drill instructors proud and compete. And yeah, do you know anything about artist recruits, Tyler?
No, I've being able to draw has on more than one occasion in basic training and in my unit gotten me out of detail work. So
yes, I mean, it's always good to be the artist recruit. You get special liberties that nobody else got.
I just remember my experience was decorating a drill sergeant hat press.
Yep.
And
was it wood?
being super nervous about making it right, because it was Drill Sergeant Thomas's was going off the trail, and hey, but I wasn't outside flipping rocks, so
yeah. that was a good day, I'm sure.
Oh, and David King also said, I was too. Being locked in a closet was the best part of boot camp.
Yeah, because nobody was yelling at you.
Right?
Exactly.
So I wanted to ask you, well, first I wanted to ask you what you thought like the role of art in society is, but I guess more specifically, what you think the role of art is for veterans.
Yeah, so as a society, I just think art is a foundation to not only document what's going on in your world, but the world around you and in other people's worlds. And, you know, we as, you know, art students or just artists, you know, look to the past, to other artists, and kind of figure out what was going on back then. And, you know, in 100 years, hopefully, those age artists will look back at us and know what art was, and, you know, we'll have a theme or a style, or, you know, kind of our own renaissance in that way. And as for veterans and veteran artists, I think it's just another tool for your toolbox to kind of, you know, express yourself. I like to say veterans have the best stories, and, you know, we are able to tell those stories in a metaphoric way or a realistic way, or, verbatim way, and Americans, put so much weight and power in the 1%, the veteran community, and this is a way for us to kind of tell them and let them in on the things that we've served and sacrificed for them.
What are some of the challenges of running this type of studio and organization outside of like the obvious of, navigating the COVID-19 world and then,
Yeah, so one of the hardest things is getting veterans to out of the box of what art is. For me, I use the word art and artist because it's a well-known word, but excuse my cat. We're in my house. Getting people out of the mindset of artists are painters and ceramicists and everything like that, but the word maker is more encompassing, and literally anybody that makes something, whether they're a welder or mechanic or, a nonprofit owner making t-shirts, for their nonprofit, all of those creative outlets just to, get your word out there, or mental health clarity, or, whatever you're using art to feed your family. I think a lot of people don't realize artists, freelancers, that's their job and that's how they feed their family. And you might think it's a frivolous job, but it's needed in our culture and needed in the environment that we live in. So there's just a lot of ways, but it's mostly getting veterans to realize that it has its health benefits. We've all dealt with alcoholism or drug abuse, or just the trauma of our service, and this is just a healthy way of hopefully getting out of your head. And like I like to say, I'm trying to save lives with art supplies. It might not work for you, but at least you have that tool in your toolbox that you can fall back on, or pass along to another veteran. Hey, I took this class. It wasn't for me, but it seems like something that you would like to do. And, kind of using that network to, really just save my brothers and sisters in arms.
That's such a interesting point. Like, you take a practical approach to making art appeal to people. I think that works not just with veterans, but a lot of times we work at a nonprofit, and you have to kind of make people feel like, why is this important, or why should this be funded at all?
Right.
I think people expect you to say answers that to someone may seem sort of whimsical or soft or something.
Right.
And people don't want to hear those arguments sometimes. So I do feel like you make that practical argument, and that does appeal to people who otherwise listen.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, Guff and I were talking, and kind of like, if it doesn't pertain to you, you don't really care, right? But I have this innate ability to, kind of talk to somebody and figure out what their interests, and be like, that's art, you're a maker, you're a part of this world, even if you don't want to claim it, and kind of getting those, nuts and bolts kind of back together to realize that, they too are creative, no matter what avenue they decide to kind of pursue. And when you make it related to them, they're more inclined to, want to advocate for you or donate money, or, when you show them the statistics that, veterans that are in the arts are more likely to survive than if they're, treated at the VA. I don't know what the statistics are, but I just know, from the world that I'm in, most of the people that I've interacted are still alive, and that's a powerful thing.
Yeah, I can see one of the challenges, especially working with veterans, is getting rid of the stigma that art making is somehow like not tough enough, you know, or whatever.
Right.
It's just like, what, do I have to show feelings all of a sudden?
Yeah,
You know?
exactly.
My dad was in Vietnam. He didn't have feelings at all. What are feelings?
No,
He didn't
how
invent
dare
those
he
until
have
like
feelings?
last year.
Exactly. My favorite thing and my favorite story to tell is the first time I ever taught a class at the Servant Center, which the Servant Center is an inpatient treatment facility, but a homeless shelter for veterans that are on the streets in Greensboro, North Carolina, or are recently got out of prison or jail, and they just need, you know, a place to get back onto their feet. The first time I taught a class there, there's 45 men at the Servant Center, and only 4 showed up, and they bribed them to come to my art class with Crackle Barrel on Saturday to go to breakfast. And, you know, at the end of the class, they were like, oh, damn, Rambo, I thought you were going to make me like paint flowers and shit. And I brought, you know, canvases pre-drawn with logos and tanks and, you know, M16s and all these, you know, kind of like paint by number, you know, things that I did myself. And the next class I had, all 45 men showed up. And because I wasn't, you know, making them talk about their emotions, or, you know, we literally just, you know, talk shit the whole time. And then, you know, the next time they all want, you know, they said, oh man, you should have came to this class. It was so fun, you know, kind of thing. And then, you know, once you earn their trust, that's when you can start diving in and having conversations and talking about our mutual mental health struggles or things that we're worried about day to day, or family life, or all of those things. So you have to kind of gain that trust. And I think that's one of the kind of niches that I have is, you know, civilians have all these great intentions, but, you know, say I go to a counselor at the VA, majority of the time they're never, you know, they haven't served their country, or, you know, they're not a woman, or they're not, you know, these things. And you know, for me, when one of these veterans at these classes say something, or an acronym, or something as simple as, you know, like, you know, a word that's only used in the military, you know, and I get it, you know, like that's just one step closer to us bonding, and them more willing to tell me their stories, and, you know, just getting them to talk. And they might not have talked in 5 or 10 years about their service, but in that one afternoon, they told me their whole life story. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do, is just get veterans out of their head and being able to tell their stories and recover from their service.
It definitely helps to be able to speak the same language, you know,
Yes.
so to speak, you know, like as we were talking about our fondness for the words fucker, or
Yeah, exactly.
referring to people as such. And
it's a good and bad term. And,
yeah,
you know, depending on the context of the conversation, you can figure out if they really like you or you're in deep shit.
So Ashley Lynch says, she missed the beginning, and I think you did cover this, but how long have you been doing this?
So I bought the bus in May of 2018, and I moved in August of 2019, and we've been full-time traveling since then. So about 9 months, but we just did the East Coast, and now we're doing a full United States tour. So we're making a loop around the entire United States in the next few months.
And do you have specific destinations in mind? I can't.
We do. So if you go to paintedbuffalostudio.com/the-American tour, you can see the entire list of all the places we plan on going. And if anybody notices that we're coming close to them or near their town, and they let me know, we'll be able to add that to the stop. And that's ultimately what we've done, how we've made this trip. Our thing is adventure and creativity kind of colliding. So a lot of outdoor in nature adventures, and kind of bringing veterans along on that, and, you know, adding the creativity and the sketchbooks and all that kind of stuff to it. But, you know, if anybody's a part of any of those stops we plan to make and they contact me, I'd love for them to come along.
And Ashley Lynch wants you to know that it's a great thing you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, they're, you know, I think it's starting to look better for veterans, who suffer traumatic experiences. There's still a long way to go, and I think this is one of the outlets that people really need in their lives. As you've talked about, drugs and alcohol will only take you so far.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's a bridge, and you either fall to your death or cross it, and you kind of are, your best advocate. And if you, don't fight for your needs, then,
And do you guys have a home base right now? I know you North Carolina is where you kind of start from. Is that where
that's kind of our hub. Oh. Yeah, that's our hub, Greensboro, just because I spent the last 3 years there. That's where my P.O. box is and kind of stuff. But ultimately, my goal is to travel the country and kind of figure out where my family and I want to call home. And my 5-10-year goal is to open an artist retreat specifically for veterans, so that they can come at kind of like an adult summer camp and be able to, have residency there, or, learn, a craft that they want to learn, kind of thing. So ultimately that's what I want to do. But right now it's in, 230 square feet of a school bus. But we have big goals that we want to, accomplish. But, I can't do it on my own, and I'm getting with other veteran nonprofits to kind of, collaborate together and kind of raise the money and ultimately, do what's best for veterans.
One thing you had said, which for anyone watching, I am not a veteran. I'm what you call it, a civilian.
But you're an advocate, and that's awesome too.
Dirty civilian.
Yeah, ew.
One of the things you're saying was a lot of times civilians mean well, and I think, but they just haven't been through that experience. So sometimes they're trying to be an advocate, maybe they're just not doing that in an actually helpful way, which I think is I think that's true to a lot of people who are advocates for groups they're not a part of.
Right.
What are things you think civilians could do when they're trying to make programming specifically for veterans? Is it like hiring other veterans to run those programs, or what are things you think could be good?
Yeah, I mean, like Tyler knows, there's a lot of veteran artists. If you're talking specifically about the art world, there's a ton of us out there, but people don't realize that we're out there. And so it's kind of just getting the word out. And, I've stopped at a lot of art studios and, talked to them about doing, on Tuesday night, could you host a veteran only art class, or on, these kind of things, and, that kind of getting your community involved, and ultimately, veterans will come out of the woodworks that you didn't even realize were veterans, because they never got the chance to tell you, oh yeah, I served my country, or I, was in the army, or I, like some people don't even realize their next door neighbors or their aunts and uncles or just their friends at college, are veterans. So just getting your community together, and then ultimately, just being aware at, the prying questions, or, those kinds of things. I think those are some of the things that a lot of veterans talk about. Well, like, guess what this, asshole asked me, or get, like kind of stuff. And so kind of just educating yourself on, the conduct and the, how to act around veterans, or, kind of stuff like that, because we are a special breed of humans, and, we are, delicate flowers. Even Tyler is one.
All delicate, special flowers.
Exactly.
I think that's on your artist bio, right?
It is, yeah.
Yes, exactly. It should be in your, you need to add it to your Instagram bio, delicate flower.
I think it's important too, to not assume that every veteran artist, and this is not for anybody in my general view right now, not assume that just because you're a veteran artist that you make work about war or bombs and all these other things. Like, we do have other experiences in our lives that we handle and navigate on a day-to-day basis, while this other part of our life is definitely looming for many of us.
Right.
You know,
And that goes back to Kate's question. Some veterans they did, 4 years, they did their time, and that's, a speck on their lifespan, and they, that's a part of their life, but that's not their whole life. Where some veterans, that's literally their whole life, and that's what they want to talk about. So you kind of have to gauge, individually and case by case, what they're, wanting to succeed, in the art world, and what stories they're willing and wanting to tell you at that moment through their art.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes there is an expectation if somebody knows that you are a veteran artist too. They invite you to a show to make work that is provocative, right, or that has to deal with something like that. And it is a little tiresome. Like, hey, I just want to make a dumb painting of a beer can or something.
Yeah.
Because, at the root of it all, if you are a veteran artist, you are a veteran artist. Like, but right, one doesn't depend on the other.
Right. And you can be both at the same time. And some days I'm more of a veteran than an artist. And some days I'm just an artist and not really, a veteran that day. It just depends on, when I wake up in the morning, who I want to be.
Exactly.
Well, it seems like that
Why
could
do you have to choose?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it seems like that could go for a lot of artists who are in like particular groups. Like if you're a woman artist, are you expected to make art about the experience of being a woman? If you're a person of color, is it fair for people to only expect you to make work about that experience? So maybe
and it's just putting you in a box. And why put, like I can talk about motherhood, I can talk about being a Marine, I can talk about being a woman, I can talk about, all array of subjects, and on some days there's more weight in one basket than the other, and that's up to the individual artist to decide on who they want to be and what they want to talk about through their art, not the public and not the community. That's the great thing about being an artist. You get to decide the story and the composition that you want to tell.
Yeah, I think one of the greatest things that someone who is a veteran and an artist told me, especially when it comes to civilians and etiquette, Tom Orr over there from Oregon, he talks about what do you say? He says, I really get pissed off when somebody says thank you for your service.
That's a touchy subject that I've heard a lot about.
Yeah, and I am one of those who are inclined to agree sometimes, with that. But he says, and this is quote was like, "Fuck that! I say welcome home," and I think that is more an appropriate thing to say to somebody who has served, whether it be foreign or domestic.
Exactly. And for a little while, when people would say thank you for your service, I would say, well, are you a good human being that I fought for, or are you a terrible human being that I fought for? That's your choice, kind of thing. And some people are like, oh yeah, like evaluating, like, oh, am I a good person? Was her service worth it? And that's kind of putting the weight back onto them, kind of thing. Because it is an awkward, thing when someone says thank you for your service. You're like, but are you really thankful, or are you just saying it because that's the thing to say?
Is that the culturally appropriate thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like I'd be really curious if you ask somebody that and they're like, no, I'm a really terrible person. Like, if they say, oh God.
But you can see it in their eyes when they're like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like I never use my blinker.
Yeah. Well, I can't. I broke it.
Did anyone ever just respond like, I think I am like a mediocre person. Like I'm kind of lackluster.
I just make the conversation awkward because that's what I do, and then they just kind of walk away.
I think you and I would get along really well.
Yeah. Oh man, that chick was a bitch. I never want to see her again.
Pam Kohler-Camp asks, how do you find places where you set up as you're traveling?
as I'm traveling, well, every night is a little different. Like last night, I slept at a Walmart parking lot. Right now, I'm sitting in a Mellow Mushroom parking lot. Some days I'm at friends' houses or stuff like that. But as far as art stuff, I do a lot of tiny house shows and kind of, that kind of stuff. And then, when other veterans are hosting events, I try to make it to as many of those as I can, kind of spread the light on, veterans and veteran art programs. It's really day to day and case by case on where, as long as my 40-foot bus can fit, I'll come. And that's usually my criteria. If I can fit my bus there, sure, I'll come. I'm all about talking to just about anybody about veterans and art and, bus life, because they all kind of coexist in my world.
Well, I know that there is a lurker off to us, your right, that is also part of
He's talking about you.
Also part of a very important mission. If you'd like to share that with us, please.
Oh shit! Your fucking surfboard.
He's too tall for my bus. It's my payback for all this.
Hey, you like diet? You like the Coke Zero?
Yeah.
I got you a Coke Zero.
Okay. Tell the people who you are and why you're on my bus.
Well, you invited me on your bus.
Did I though?
I didn't break in. It'd be very easy.
I opened the door. Okay.
All right. So my name's Zach McGuffey. Most people call me Guff, and I run a national nonprofit for veteran suicide prevention, utilizing holistic healing, and that means for our veterans, we utilize jiu-jitsu, yoga, and flotation therapy around the nation. For children, we offer college scholarships for children left behind from veteran suicide. So if a veteran commits suicide, their parent or guardian commits suicide, we give the children a $1,000 scholarship. And it's we put it in an account that accrues money over time. So if it's an 18-year-old child, they'll go right to school and we give it right to that. We release it to the college. If, they're 13 years old, then it's in an account that accrues money over time. So if it's I think the account, if the $1,000 is in the account for, let's say, 7 years, that ends up being about a $1,900 college scholarship. So it just depends on the age of the child, when the mother, father, or guardian passes away. And then every year, I personally, along with my veterans that we work with in our nonprofit, we go to Mount Rainier, and then I lead them up Mount Rainier to the summit, along with Veterans Adventure Group. Veterans Adventure Group is the one that facilitates all the climbs. We are partnered with them. My best friend runs that nonprofit, so we all do our climbs together. So that's what we do. But, my background is I tried to kill myself when I got out of the Marine Corps. I mean, I went to Iraq and Afghanistan, and I saw some, pretty horrific things in 2010 in Afghan, and I got home and, tried to kill myself and failed. 9 months later, my best friend killed himself, and he left behind his niece and his daughter. And those were the first two people that we gave a college scholarship to. And I went to college after all of that. I started going to school after I tried to commit suicide. My best friend committed suicide. And I went to school after about a year after that. And I started, educating myself. And I realized that I wanted to do something about it. And so I started a nonprofit. But within that year, my best friend that I had when we were in Afghanistan stepped on a landmine or an IED and died pretty much initially. He survived sort of for an hour, and then he died on the table. But his aunt and uncle took me in North Carolina, taught me how to be a carpenter, and I started like working out again, doing yoga and climbing mountains out there in North Carolina. I found that is what helped me a lot. Got done doing that, came home, went to school, started the nonprofit, realized I want to be outside, I want to do yoga, I want to work out, and I want to get into holistic healing, but I also want to offer to veterans, but I also want to take care of the children left behind. So then one day I just said, I want to get my story out. I started getting my story out. People started wanting to give me money. I didn't know what to do with the money. So I was like, well, shit, what do I do with all this money? I was like, I guess I'll just start a nonprofit. And then I did. And then here we are 5 years later. So I wanted to do the right thing. I wanted to put the money where the people wanted me to do it. I wanted to do the honorable thing. I didn't want to keep any of it, but I also wanted to make sure that nonprofits, that this money was going to, was altruistic in their intentions. And I said, well, the person I trust the most in this world is me and my kids, and I can't trust my kids with this money. So I was like, I'll do something with it, And 5 years later, we're one of the larger nonprofits. We are the largest nonprofit that specializes in veteran suicide prevention. So, and then we've been growing our network ever since. And I work with Struggle Beyond the Decade. I work with Veterans Adventure Group, who we do the climbing and jumping with. We do skydives with them as well. And then I met her, and I was like, fuck, let's partner up, let's hang out and work out, and here we are. And that's what it's all about, I think, anyway. So that's my story real quick.
in a very small nutshell.
Yeah.
Right. Well, obviously, thank you for sharing that with us, and then also thank you for what you do. Bless you both for that, for what you guys both do.
That's kind of what we've been talking about for the last few hours is, we as veterans find a need mostly in ourselves. What do we need? And we can't find it, so we make it happen. And then also collaborating with other veterans and their nonprofits, because we're in this together. I have, resources that I've come across. He's had resources that he's come across. And if we work together, not against each other, we can do a lot more together than we can apart. And so that's ultimately what we're trying to do, is kind of collaborate and help as many people as possible.
Yeah.
And if something doesn't work, for a veteran, they are not into art, but they talk about they want to be outdoors more or do other alternative holistic measures, then I can refer them to Guff, or he can refer his guys to me. It's kind of just networking all over the place.
Yeah, what I love the most about Jessica, other than she's doing something that I would love my family to do, is just have a fucking bus and travel, because I love to travel.
I'm living my best life. I do have to say.
Jessica spoke about, we're not in competition. I didn't bring it up to her. She just said this, she just said it out in the universe. And I was like, you know what, Jessica, that's exactly what I have. I have this exact same conversation with all of the nonprofits that I'm partnered with, because we aren't in competition. We're all trying to save lives. There is no competition in saving lives. We all just trying to save lives. Like, what? Who the fuck are you to try to create some competition about it? We're all, if we're all trying to save lives, then that means we all love each other, and we should all be in the same team. Because I am good at one thing and Jessica is great at another thing. We both have things we're not good at and things we are good at, and we should all just work together. I'm better a little bit more at most things than you.
No, you're a hiker, not a mountaineer.
I'm a fucking mountain climber. I'm out of here. But anyway, we're all friends. I climb mountains, Jessica.
You're a hiker.
I don't hike. I climb. God damn it. I hate you. I'm going to sit on your bus, though.
I'll open the door.
I ain't leaving.
And ultimately, that's what gets veterans, out there and talking and communicating and, hopefully out of their head and back into the community.
And finding camaraderie.
Yeah. I mean, Marines love hate each other. You're, but he's my brother, and I guess I'll keep him around.
Big large brother.
For anyone out there watching, this is kind of like, we are sort of in like the wrap up period. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat now. And then I just had a question. What support are you not getting right now that would be really helpful to you?
Right now, I'm looking for funds or a donor or something to make the bus completely off the grid. So that's solar. And that way, no matter where a veteran is, I'll be able to go and we'll have lights. We'll be able to, have electricity. The fridge will be open and all of that kind of stuff. So I can go literally anywhere and be able to help a veteran. Right now, wherever I go, I have to either be primitive and have no electricity and do things during the day, or have to meet up to a place where I can plug in and have electricity. So we're trying to fundraise right now using GoFundMe and Patreon to put solar on the bus, and that way, you know, we can help and get to as many veterans as possible.
So you heard that, people. I mean, help support a good cause.
Yeah.
Like seriously.
If you send me that link to your GoFundMe, I'll put that on our page and then put that on the YouTube channel as well.
Perfect.
But I think we'll wrap it up here. Thank you both so much for all that you do. And thank you for taking the time to share with us about what you do.
Yeah, thank you so much, you guys, for, you know, including me in this. And, you know, like, you know, we were just talking about, you know, we can't do this alone. And the bigger we make our tribe, the, you know, better the outcome is. And
once we get through this, the social distancing, we were able to function socially, you know, semi-normal again. Hopefully you guys can swing through. Yeah, and that's one of the things also we were talking about, you know, the social thing is, you know, I'm available 24 hours, 7 days a week. You know, if I can't make it to you, or, you know, like you're in a health crisis that you can't, you know, be around people, you know, there's all kinds of technologies that we can work through with the Zoom and FaceTime and, you know, Facebook and all of these things, and do art classes online. So just about any way you can think of, you know, us getting together, we can make that happen. I will say you heard it here first. Thanks so much. Thank you guys. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you guys on Thursday. Thanks, guys.